KTN News, and it is Wednesday, the 9th of August, 2023. I'm glad that you've chosen KTN News as your channel of choice to inform you today, and of course to keep you apprised as far as current affairs is concerned. Every Wednesday we have Global Today coming your way, where we put our pulse on what is happening globally. Right now, as we know, the Ukrainian war is still ongoing. Here also in the Horn of Africa, Sudan, it is in a warring faction as it is. Niger also is still on it as well, and people are raising questions regarding also what will be happening with ECOWAS, who will be meeting tomorrow to have this summit that will determine which way forward as far as Niger is concerned. Sanctions are still on, but also the neighboring countries are threatening that if there will be any military intervention in Niger, they're bound also to chime in or to join, I should say. We have also on the table the issue of ICC that is taking another shape, where the prosecutor of ICC, Karim Khan, has recused himself from all cases that will be involving Kenya, and this is following the scruples that were raised by Azimio regarding the neutrality of Karim Khan, that this is a conflict of interest. In fact, he was here in the country where he got a honorary doctorate from Mount Kenya University, but right now he has recused himself. But still on ICC, we have President William Ruto, who has signed to have immunity against ICC. And this is following the Malabo Protocol. What does this portend? Because we have also the Rights Watch group who are raising concerns around this, saying this will be another avenue where the president and his senior government operatives will not be liable for any humanity or crimes against humanity if they were. So we shall be looking at this and a raft of other issues as well, following what is happening in Niger, following what is happening also in Congo, and also following the elections in the US that are bound just to be happening soon. The Republicans and the Democrats are shaking their candidates into place. We have Donald Trump, who people are questioning if he becomes president, will he rule from the prison? He's the first US president to be indicted so far. We shall be putting tails on that as well. Holding court this morning with Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who's the chair of the Horn Institute. Also will be joined by Professor Peter Kwanza, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute. Also, Professor Noami Damba, who is a senior partner at Glossop, also an expert on foreign policy and defense, and also will be joined this morning by Hamid Hashi, who's a governance and policy analyst. A lot that we have to cover this morning. You know the drill. Head over to our Twitter handle, which is at KTN News, and also you can follow me at Dibal Ainea. Already they're here in studio. They're chiming in. You can hear from the background. I'll be joining them much later. But let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. This is what you're waking up this morning to. But before we head there, they always say, whatever the weather, we will weather the weather, whether you like it or not. And this is how the weather is looking at, or the outlook is here for you. The weather is up next. This is what is on the standard this morning. This is what you're waking up to 1 year later. Change of regime. On August the 9th, 2022, Kenyans trooped to polling station and made their intent known. The battle was between hustlers and the elite, or the dynasty, between a bottom-up economic model where subsidies will only be awarded to production. A year later, we begin to look at the promises made versus the reality on the ground. You have this story well laid out on page 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Standard today, 1 year later. Then you have your ellipsis, or alama ya dukuduku. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. This is the eye-popping figure that Ruto got. 7,176,141 votes that Ruto garnered to clinch the presidency. And we have also highlights here, pledges versus reality. Let's just go through them one by one. Political fronts, the making of a monolithic party and clamping down on opposition. Is country still in campaign mode? Is country still in campaign mode? That is the abiding question. What matters economy? Let me try and zoom in. We go together. They say they inherited a battered economy 1 year after elections. Have things become better or worse? That is another probing question. On agriculture, government has delivered on its pledge to distribute affordable fertilizer. However, it is one of many farming inputs. Also, opposition, Azimia has restored to streets protest as a way of driving home their points. And on education, government intends to implement radical proposals that will change the sector significantly. You had also the Presidential Working Party report that has just been forwarded to the president with a raft of issues inside on how it can change drastically the landscape as far as matters academia is concerned. 1 year later, the Standard interrogates the milestone that the Kenya Kwanza administration has made so far. Remember, today is the 9th of August. Today is when we were going to the ballots last year. Journalists account day, Nairobi skies were darkened. That is on page 6 and 7 of the Standard. That is the Nairobi bombing of the cooperative bank there and the US embassy. Cabinet shifts plan on sugar companies. That is on page 2 of the Standard. And Man City is still the team to beat as EPL kicks off. Man City is still the team to beat as EPL kicks off. This is on page 32 of the Standard this morning. This is how it looks. Make sure you grab a copy for yourself to get all the news that you need to be informed this morning. Moving on, let's see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. How juniors bagged 600,000 shillings each per month in allowances. Some 21 employees of the Department of Public Works each pocketed 617,285 monthly or 20,294 daily, assuming they worked 365 days, to collectively draw 155.5 million shillings annually in travel packs alone. The amount is nearly 20% of the entire department's wage bill. This story is on page 7 of the Daily Nation, right? And this is happening, of course, in State's Department. 7.4 million shillings amount in shillings each employee bagged annually. And that has been flagged, of course, by the Auditor General. Back to Bomas, where it began. Today is the D-Day, remember, where the Azimia and Kenya Kwanza are coming face to face at Bomas of Kenya to thrash out matters of dialogue. Today, representatives of President Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga converge for talks to end a lingering post-election crisis at a venue where a year ago the warring factions scuffled prior to the declaration of polls or the poll results following a tight presidential contest. The dispute has persisted since, and you have the story on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And civil servants to lose allowances, salaries, body scraps, retreat, sitting and task force payment, as well as reviews local travel rates for public officers. You have the story on page 5 or page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Looking on top here, judge who blocked Ruto taxes twice moved to Malindi. That is the story that you want to follow on page 8 of the Daily Nation. And cabinet abandons plan to sell 6 state sugar millers. That is on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Remember also, there is fury over Kome's protest. That's claim. We'll run you by that story momentarily. And Police Chief Japhet Koome claims bodies paraded in morgues were not victims of police killings but Opposition leaders term his allegation outrageous and insensitive to grieving families. Police Chief Japhet Koome claims bodies paraded in morgues were not victims. We'll run you by that story in a short while. That is the Daily Nation. This is how it looks. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. Endless war. Ruto, Raila in combat 1 year on. It's all about supremacy on a day like this. 1 year ago, the two faced off in a hotly contested poll. 12 months after polls, Kenya remains in a perpetual election mode. And you have this story on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. I run you by some of the highlights. 1 year on, Ruto and Raila can't agree on the fall final results. On the fall poll results, I should say, not final. On the final poll results. And also, there are no IBC commissioners. Process to replace Chebukati teams told. General 4 forced out without pay. One now in exile. IBC evaluation report yet to be implemented. Some opposition governors and MPs have joined government. That is the Star. The story is well fleshed out for you on page 4 and 5 of the Star. On top here, judicial changes. Transfer of judge who suspended Finance Act draws mixed reactions. You have this story on page 7 of the Star this morning. And also, high prices of onions leave customers with teary eyes. Peeling onions can't bring tears to one's eyes, but now most Kenyans have to contend with teary eyes as they shop for the vegetables. Or for the vegetable, prices have tripled in just less than 2 months, forcing wholesalers, retailers, and customers to drastically adjust their budgets. That is a story tucked away on page 11 of the Star this morning. City Hall and the scrutiny of the pending bills, huge bank loans as well. These are a story you can follow on page 7 of the Star this morning. Koome sparks uproar over police killings is a story that you want to follow. And is a splash on the front page of the People Daily this morning. Police Inspector General Japhet Koome can be seen here addressing journalists at the Nairobi Police Training College, Kiganjo, yesterday after opening the station. Commander's development course for officers promoted last week. Azimio leader Raila Odinga expressed shock at Kome's body hiring claims, saying the coalition will pursue justice for the victims. Speaking out of turn, Azimio protest after Inspector General claims that some leaders of demonstrations have been hiring bodies from morgues with the aim of tarnishing police image. Of course, we'll run you by that story also momentarily. That is inside the People Daily. Cabinet changes tune on the sale of sugar millers. Government now says it will only lease out struggling firms in rest to make them profitable. CS has also approved division of oil corporation into 3 autonomous firms. That is the Nairobi Oil Corporation. You can follow that story inside the People Daily this morning. On top here, controversial judge moved in reshuffle. Justice Mugure Thande transferred to Malindi Justice just weeks after ruling that temporarily stopped implementation of the controversial Finance Act, as Judge David Majanja also moved. You have the story inside the People Daily as well on page 7. Taifa Leo is up next. Waafu wakaanga Koome. It says waafu wakaanga Koome. Zaidi ya watu 50 walithibitishwa kufa kwa risasi na wadau mbalimbali wakiwemo mashirika ya kutetea haki ya binadamu. That is another story that you want to follow on page 2. Is a splash on the front page of Taifa Leo. Ngoma ya mazungumzo ya Azimio. Kenya Kwanza yaanza. That begins today. And all eyes will be trained at the Bomas of Kenya from 11:30 today. And of course, we shall be following that story for you, giving you a live update of what will be happening there. This is Taifa Leo. Let's buckle down to some business, where we have a Business Daily. And private investor to run national oil fuel stations private investors to run national oil fuel stations. This is after the approval of the Cabinet Secretary to now divide the National Oil Corporation into three facets: the upstream, downstream, and also National Oil Trading Company or Corporation. Deal to rescue parastatal from collapse. Licensed oil marketer to run subsidiary. Just to give you a snippet of what it's saying here, the government will hand more than 100 fuel stations owned by the National Oil Corporation of Kenya to a private investor in a rescue deal aimed at shielding it from collapse. The move is part of a restructuring process that will see the state-owned parastatal, popularly known as National Oil, split into three subsidiaries under one holding company. The government will then hold onto the strategic assets through two subsidiaries, but allow the downstream market entity, which will control the fuel stations, to be run profitably by a private investor. You can read the rest of the details there inside the Business Daily. And how NOC will be restructured. Also, you have illustration here. The government to restructure NOC into three subsidiaries segmented around the petroleum products value chain. We have the National Oil Company, which will be down the holding company. And down there we'll have also NOC Upstream Limited, handle exploration and oil production activities and services. Also, we'll have NOC Trading Limited. This will operate in the midstream, hold strategic stocks or petroleum products for import and export. We have NOC Downstream Limited, focus on marketing and distribution of petroleum products. That's how this particular trading company or the holding company will be run moving forward following the approval by Cabinet in Ghana. Now, puzzle of skyrocketing food prices in spite of cheap imports. Traders use the duty-free window to import is under 6 months quantities of rice is under 6 months quantities of rice equivalent to what Kenyans normally ships in a year, but still failed to cool the skyrocketing prices in the country. Fresh data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics show that despite the increase in supply, retail prices of rice have barely gone down, with a 5 kilogram of the cereal nearly doubling from the beginning of the year. They have this story tucked away on page 2 of the People of the Business Daily this morning. Let's just look also what we have on the sidebar there. The ticker, 21 state workers and 7.4 million shillings per diem each. Some 21 government employees in public works and 617,285 every month on average in allowances to inspect projects around the country in 2021-2022 year, lifting the lead on the cash cow that per diems have become for civil servants. You have the story on page 5 of the Business Daily. And billionaire Raval joins case to root for Finance Act. We have billionaire businessman Narendra Raval, popularly known as Guru, who is voicing his support for the controversial Finance Act 2023, saying it contains incentives that will benefit local manufacturers. He's joined that particular case. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Business Daily this morning. And also, use of shares for loans rises in second quarter. The volume of shares used as collateral for loans rose by 77.5% million units in the second quarter of the year, halting a decline that had been seen since the quarter of 2022. This is a Business Daily for you. If you cross over to Uganda, there's a Daily Monitor, Bessie J. He says, "Here's my proof of dirty cash." And of course, this is following his party, which is in trouble. The FDC states this is a response from him. And here is my proof of dirty cash. And you have the serial numbers of contested notes there. You can read the rest of the story inside the Daily Monitor. It's a bit hazy for me from here, but you can grab a copy for yourself there. Also, still on the front page of the Daily Monitor, MPs say government advertising order should be revisited. MPs say government advertising order should be revisited. You can follow the story inside the Daily Monitor. If you're waking up in Uganda this morning, and there is a coffee summit, you can see African leaders seeking to rip from coffee. Some of African leaders are there, also flanked by alongside Yoweri Museveni. You can see Musalia Mudavadi is there. He's actually, or was attending this particular summit that is in Uganda. The East Africa this week, Kenya, Uganda, $6 billion to put SGR on track. Kenya and Uganda is seeking $6 billion to put SGR on track. Now, the two partners have abandoned the original sponsor, China, and are talking to European and Gulf lenders, targeting to take the line all the way to DRC, Rwanda, and Juba. The two partners have abandoned the original sponsor, who is China, and are now talking to European and Gulf lenders, targeting to take the line all the way to DRC, Rwanda, and Juba. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the East African this week. I shall be showing you the editorial cartoons much later, and what is happening in Tanzania as well, and Rwanda, following also an uproar by the rights group regarding the case of Felician Kabuga, where we have the Rwanda genocide victims slamming Kabuga's release. This is following, of course, the ICC recent declaration that he is not fit to stand trial. That is a story that you can follow also with the panelists here this morning as we take the discussion forward. But let me just drop in and hear from them just to get introductory remarks before we buckle down to the stories of the day this morning. Let's hear from Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who's the chair of the Horn Institute. Good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, Dibal.
Yeah, it's been a while. You've been globe-trotting. Finally, the plane has landed.
The real Mustafa.
Finally, the plane has landed. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, also Professor Peter Kagwanya, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Dibal. I'm back.
You're back?
Yes.
Yeah, you sound subdued.
Why?
I did see you also coming with the Fedora Cup. When you come with the Fedora Cup, I know things are...
I have it there. Yes, and have original coffee.
And the original coffee? Is it the Arabica?
Ready for work.
Ready for work. I know a coffee lover here is Ahmed Hashi.
Yeah.
Yes. You can't do without coffee.
Yeah.
I think it's a good stimulant for you, yes?
I think if you let me have my coffee, I'll be able to put together. There's a line I remember that in 1941, where Winston Churchill gave that speech on blood, sweat, and tears.
And tears, yes.
And Germany was, Germany was armed to the teeth. It was the most powerful army in the world. So when he gave that speech in Parliament, I think Lord Salisbury was sitting at the top of the Parliament. I don't think he was an MP then, or maybe he was. And he quipped next to, these little things. I get to read these things. He told the guy next to him, he said, Winston Churchill mobilized the English language and sent it to attack Germany because England did not have any arms. Its army was everywhere. They had mobilized the language, not an army, to take it to war. So our job here is to mobilize the English language to tell the people of this country, for example, why there are so many Komes in government. Everywhere I read, Kome sparks uproar.
Right, we should.
Kome, Voodoo judiciary, Kome, 1 year later. Maybe we should have more Mustafas in the government.
All right, Professor Noah Midama, good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you, Dubal, and good to see particular Mustafa. I have not seen courageous around. Dubal, there is a word that is just keep on building and being used very loosely in our country, and that is the term handshake.
Handshake. All right. Just leave it there. We shall come to the term handshake because today is a day, and of course, no one is accepting that this is handshake, or they've starkly denied that the handshake is in the offing as well. The meeting will be happening at Bomas of Kenya, as I had indicated earlier. We shall be putting tails on that story for you. But let's begin from where also this story of dialogue is all about, because of police brutality that followed the demonstrations, where we have Inspector General of Police Japhet Kome, who is a man under siege. This is following the trouble over the remarks he made that Azimio leaders hired bodies from mortuaries in order to support their claims of police brutality during the recent anti-government protest. Kome's remarks made at Kiganja Police Training College in Nyeri has angered, among other Azimio leaders, Raila Odinga and the rest. Clemens Masomo has more.
Police Japheth Koome has been a quiet man in the last few weeks. This amid accusations from the Azimio coalition that police used brutal force in handling protesters during the recent anti-government demos called by Azimio. A recent report by rights bodies, including LSK and Amnesty International, pointed an accusing finger at the police for killing more than 20 protesters, and today, Koome has come out to defend the police.
And as I've stated, I have professional officers. What they have done in the recent past is commendable. I commend all of them. I wish and medals nipatie kila mmoja wao. Wamefanya kazi nzuri.
Speaking at Kiganjo Police College in Nyeri, the IG said police will not allow violence and destruction of property that comes along with the demos. He went further to accuse the political leaders in the opposition of allegedly faking deaths of their supporters. He claimed that the leaders hired dead bodies from mortuaries to support their claims that police killed demonstrators.
Haven't you seen bodies, about many bodies, put together, then pictures are taken, thrown all over in the social media? And the information I have is they go to some of the mortuaries, compromise the workers there, people even who died of some illness, people who died maybe out of an accident or other causes. They take photographs of such bodies and blame on police.
But reacting to the controversial remarks by the Inspector General, Azimio leaders led by Raila Odinga condemned the claims, maintaining that many of those who died were shot dead by police. According to Raila, there is adequate evidence since all the bodies had gunshot wounds.
And it is actually very disappointing to see a statement from Inspector General of Police, Mr. Koome, saying that we hired dead bodies to accuse police of brutality. I don't know in which world he lives, because the bodies we've been burying have bullet wounds on them.
Clement Masombo, KTN News.
Now, meanwhile, the statement by Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome has angered a cross-section of Kenyans. It is viewed as insensitive to the grieving families of victims of police brutality. Aside from Azimio, human rights organizations have also blamed the police over the deaths of close to 24 people during the anti-government protests, with most of the deaths recorded in Nairobi, Kisumu, Nakuru, Kisii, and Makueni. Rita Tinina reports on the confrontation between Azimio and the IG, which may have touched the wrong nerve this time round.
When Azimio announced it would hold its second protest in March over, among other issues, the high cost of living, Inspector General of Police Japheth Koome had his guns trained on the coalition.
Hilo nataka kukuambia saa huu, yeyote ako na huo mpango kesho kuleta vurugu kwa nchi yetu utakipata. Kesho siweki mtu kwa parado, yeyote nita arrest. Whoever you are, ni kurusha we quarantine, kurusha nyuma, uende jela, ufungwe milele.
That was on the 26th of March this year, and Koome was headed on a collision course with Azimio. Azimio supporters held demonstrations, engaging the police in running battles. The protests left several people dead and dozens injured. Azimio blamed the deaths and injuries on the police and said it had written to the ICC seeking to have Koome investigated over his role in the protests. Talk of a man with an indifferent approach, or is it offensive tone?
Umeleta hiyo barua leo, nimeisoma, nimeona Koome ametajwa mara karibu 20 kwa hiyo barua. Sasa nashindwa ndugu zanguni. A senior politician spending all the energy mentioning a policeman 20 times. There are better things to do.
At a news conference at his private residence in Kamulu, Koome remained unmoved.
We shall not be intimidated. kazi yetu tutafanya.
More protests were held, more lives were lost. The LSK, Amnesty International, among other human rights organizations, have blamed the police over the deaths. In a report released last week, the police were blamed for killing over 20 people during the protests.
We'd want to pursue personal responsibility, particularly for the police commanders that we're able to establish.
Azimio leaders have been attending funerals of those who lost their loved ones during the protests. Some families are yet to bury their loved ones. Koome, who has been quiet for a while, appeared on Tuesday to make a statement, one that to critics is outrageous and downright insensitive to grieving families.
They go to some of the mortuaries, compromise the workers there, people even who died of some illness, people who died maybe out of an accident or other causes. They take photographs of such bodies and blame on police.
The pain of losing a loved one is one that cannot be described. Can Koome tell that to Evelyn Achungo, who lost her two sons, 24-year-old William Mamulele and his 22-year-old younger brother Brian Onyango in Nyalenda, Kisumu? Can Koome tell that to the family of Raphael Shigali, who was shot dead in Makadara, Nairobi? Can Koome tell that to the family of the Boda Boda rider who died of gunshot wounds in Nakuru? And many other relatives who are still grieving the loss of their loved ones? Several issues are used to play politics in the country, but for the African culture where the dead are honored and sometimes feared, death is not one of them. Someone tell Japheth Koome Nchebere. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
All right, and Chief Justice Martha Koome, who is also the president of the Supreme Court, I should say, is now expected to form a panel of top judges of the court to determine the case challenging the Court of Appeal decision to lift orders on implementation of a controversial finance law. The Supreme Court has certified the case as urgent and directed the applicants to serve the respondents by close of business today. Jeff Kirui has more.
The fate of the implementation of Finance Act 2023 now lies with the Apex Court after the Supreme Court certified urgent the case challenging its implementation. The court issued orders for the case to be placed before Chief Justice Martha Koome for her to constitute a panel of Supreme Court judges to hear the case. The applicants have also been ordered to serve their respondents by Wednesday this week, who will in turn file their responses by Wednesday next week. Eliud Karanza Matindi, Benson Odiwar Otieno, Okia Omtata and Brian Angima petitioned the Supreme Court against the Court of Appeal that lifted injunctions preventing the implementation of the contentious Finance Act of 2023. Among the contentious issues being challenged in the Finance Act is the housing levy that requires the employees to contribute 1.5% of their salary and the employer contribute the same amount towards government affordable housing project. On Monday, a three-judge bench of the High Court declined to suspend sections of the Finance Act in a petition filed by the Law Society of Kenya.
Once the Court of Appeal lifted the suspension, it meant that the Finance Act would be implemented. Although the court stated that the court could consider suspending specific provisions of the Act, because the implementation would have an irreversible effect, and where parties cannot be refunded, we are not persuaded that we should exercise this jurisdiction at this stage in view of the fact that those issues were all before the court when it made the decision.
It's a very sad day for this country that a senator can say the speaker and the speakers are cheating in a court of law and it is swept under the carpet by a judge of the High Court. It's a very sad day, my lord. And it is something that we should not take lightly in this country. Otherwise, there's no point for rule of law.
Justices David Majanja, Christine Meoli and Lawrence Mugambi unanimously ruled that they had no powers to entertain the applications filed by Law Society of Kenya and Kenya Human Rights Commission, as the Court of Appeal had already issued an order unfreezing the Finance Act of 2023. This means that if the Supreme Court judges hear the case and agree with petitioners, then the implementation of the Finance Act may be stopped pending the hearing and determination of the case. The implementation of the Finance Act has seen some deduction backdated to July pay when the law came into force. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Now, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition has appointed embattled Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni to lead the legal and technical team to support its 5-member talks team. The Azimio team has also announced it is ready for the talks that begin today at the Bomas of Kenya, and has also asked their Kenya Kwanza counterparts to cease propagating vitriol and grandstanding. However, the Kenya Kwanza team, led by the majority leader Kimani Ichung'wah, has rubbished the new team, saying the Azimio coalition is jumping the gun before a preliminary meeting.
With the stage now set for the fresh round of talks beginning tomorrow, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya team Tuesday announced an appendage of its 5-member team with embattled Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni leading the legal and technical department.
You have settled on Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, to head the legal and technical team to the talks. You have tasked our delegation and our technical teams under the able leadership of His Excellency Kalonzo and Kioni to go to these talks with courage of and open minds.
This support team will include Azimio lawyer Paul Mwangi, who will head the legal team, while Adam Zolo, a scholar, will also lead the technical team.
We are here to announce that we are ready. We stand for transparent, above board, and speedy talks guided by decorum, honesty, and respect for the people of Kenya.
Na mimi yangu ni kuwaomba Wakenya wasidanganywe. Kama kuna amendment ya katiba wanataka kufanya, wasipitie hii bipartisan talks. Iwe bombers wa Kenya waongee wote.
The inclusion of Kioni to the team has been seen as a way to quell the growing internal tension after Mount Kenya leaders in Azimio missed out on the original list of the talks team. Azimio leader Raila Odinga has refuted claims that he is trying to force his way into the government.
Azimio is not interested in handshake. We don't want to shake anybody's hands. Look at those people whose hands are tainted with blood of innocent Kenyans.
I invite all members of the press. We have got nothing to hide. If we are engaging on issues that relate to Kenyans, it's only right that we do it in an open forum where Kenyans can see and witness the engagement, so that we don't bring issues that do not relate to the people of Kenya.
However, in a quick rejoinder, Kenya Kwanza, through their lead in the talks, Kimani Ichung'wah, said the new plans by Azimio will not deter their plans to have talks solely on the issues affecting the common mwananchi.
I have no business to engage with the Kionis of this world in some technical team. I engage with Kalonzo Musyoka and the dialogue team that has been set up. The technical teams will engage at the technical level. The legal teams will engage at the legal level in advising their team, not engaging with us.
It will not change anything because our agenda is fixed. It's about the office of the leader of the official opposition. It's about the office of Prime Cabinet Secretary. It's about entrenching GAF and CDF into the constitution. You know, it's about the reconstitution of the IBC.
And with the second round of the bipartisan talks expected to kick off tomorrow at the Bomas of Kenya, the issue of the inclusion of the high cost of living in the talks still remains contentious, with both sides sticking to their guns. Emmanuel Tor, KTN News from Karen, Nairobi.
Now, Kenya leaders led by President William Ruto, who is on a 5-day tour of Mount Kenya region, has committed to deliver his pledges and promises to the people of the mountain region. He asked grassroots leaders in the area to spread the gospel of his agenda. The president was responding to his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, who warned over what he called betrayal that made the region abandon former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Meanwhile, the president also chaired a cabinet meeting at Sagana State Lodge, where he sanctioned the improvement and commercialization of 6 sugar millers in a bid to address the plight of sugarcane farmers. Danny Karoki has more.
Bila ya bundles, munaendelea na kupiga simu na kuendelea.
In his fourth day in the Mount Kenya region tour, President William Ruto held a meeting with 11 county leaders and stakeholders in different sectors as he highlighted his agenda to the region. It was in the delegates meeting from Mount Kenya region that matters of betrayal were raised by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua.
For the record, the mountain is calm. And it is satisfied with the leadership of President William Ruto so far. And the mountain will continue being behind fully our president.
Gachagua warning that the region will not be happy if the president will go against his promise.
In this region, once we have accepted you, unless you betray us, because we hate betrayal. Your betrayal we hate. And that is why when Uhuru Kenyatta betrayed you, tuliwachana naye tukakuja kwako.
Hii serikali ya saa hii ni ya mahasla. Hapa hakuna handshake, hapa hakuna msumukate, hapa hakuna chochote. Kazi ile iko hapa ni ya hawa. Kazi ya housing, kazi ya digital jobs, kazi biashara ya hawa. Hiyo ndio kazi iko, ama kuna kazi nyingine.
Gachagua's statement coming at a time when there is push for dialogue between the two warring sides of Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. The move has raised jitters in the region, with the leaders keen on knowing the issues to be discussed. Some leaders telling off the opposition over any kind of handshake.
Your Excellency, let nobody dream and imagine that there can never be a problem. Kama munatafuta shida, mwende mutafute pahali ingine. Hapa Mulima, we are good people, we are honest people, and we respect authority.
And for the first time in the current administration, the president held his cabinet meeting in Sagana State Lodge, where the cabinet sanctioned the improvement and commercialization of 6 sugar millers, among them Zoya Sugar, Chemelil Sugar, South Nyanza Sugar, and under receivership millers Miwani Sugar Company, Muhoroni Sugar Company, and Mumias Sugar Company, in a bid to address the plight of sugarcane farmers in the country. Also in the cabinet, the government agreed to begin a fresh registration exercise for beneficiaries of the Inua Jamii Safety Net program, which covers senior citizens, persons living with disabilities, and vulnerable households. The president also officially launched the new KCC factory in Kiganjo in efforts to improve milk production.
My instructions to KCC is that let us begin to think about how we are going to cut out costs and to cut out brokers and to eliminate unnecessary expenses so that mkulima aweze kupata ile 50 iende kwa mfuko yake.
And your government has intervened in the last budget. They were able to give us over 700 million towards that direction.
Na ukisikiria hawa wakulima wetu, unasikiria the entire chain, including education.
The president will conclude his 5-day tour Wednesday. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News.
Indeed, and of course you can see all that talk that we've just been playing the clips is all leading up to today, and most of it at the Bomas of Kenya. Is it all sewn up for success, or will there be challenges along the way as well, as far as impediments along the way is concerned? Already you can see some of the leaders are saying, you know, there's posturing that is being, of course, put forward that some of the leaders there should not be in the negotiating table. It is fire. And the pot is hot, as you can see their conditions. Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, as depicted there by Stano in today's People Dailies editorial cartoon. Fire that will be happening today at Bomas of Kenya today. We shall be also following that story for you. He came, he saw, he conquered. And this is the president tour in Mount Kenya. He came, he saw, he conquered. That is another editorial cartoon that will be showing up momentarily there. And we can see Rigathi Gachagua and the president laughing away after doling out the rice that he had promised to deliver to the people of Murang'a. There you are. He came, he saw, he conquered. And you can see that Kagwanja, you want to comment on this cartoon?
No, the rice was not promised to Muranga people.
It was in Nyeri. But it's epitomizing the Mount Kenya.
We have to.
I'm sure.
Muranga people like Githeri.
I thought you eat potatoes.
So they should have been promised God Githeri.
Yeah.
Possibly some Githeri, some potatoes.
Yeah.
And that will eat waru.
Waru, yes.
The rabon.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, we are okay.
All right, that is the standard today. Gams, of course, he came, he saw, he conquered, he's laughing away. The people of Nyeri have been, of course, getting their promise of eating rice. Remember, he said, when we get to power, we shall come here and celebrate. And this is it that has been promised by Rigathi Gachagua. We have in the Daily Nation the truth, and there's a bit of delay, but you will see it momentarily. Out of stock, and we can see behind the police station there is the IG, who actually is inside that particular kiosk, and the truth is out of stock. And behind him we can see the caskets there of depicting some of police brutality that has been happening. You've seen the clip on how he's totally denying anything happens, and that Azimio actually had bodies or corpses from the morgues to try and project the police as people who are insensitive, and of course the brutality that went there. But look at his nose. Out of stock is the truth, and this is all about Pinocchio, and then Pinocchio's growing nose. Every time he lied, it got longer and longer and longer. And this is what Victor has drawn in the Daily Nation this morning. And the Star, Ozone is there. What dead bodies? What dead bodies are we talking about? And you can see Azimio also peeping there through this particular carpet. We have IG standing on top of the carpet there, but beneath there we have Kenyans, or yes, citizens, it will come up shortly, who are bleeding, and Azimio leader is trying to lift this particular carpet off, but you have the IG standing on it, and the blood is, of course, flowing copiously there. You shall see it momentarily, a bit of a delay. But let's talk about the truth and Pinocchio, and who's telling the truth as far as the morgue bodies is concerned. And is Pinocchio also telling the truth? How then do you believe Pinocchio if the lie or the nose always gets longer and longer with every lie that is stripping off his tongue? Ahmed Hashi. But let's begin with Dr. Mustafa.
Let's start. Hashi is itching to talk.
No, we need to go sequentially. How we
yes. Mustafa.
Thank you.
Ukishindwa nani patie.
No, not siwezi kushindwa. First of all, Dibal, it's very unfortunate that Kenyans have lost lives in this in the protests, in the manner that they've been losing their lives. Secondly, it's very difficult to establish facts. We're living in a post-truth world where there's a lot of propaganda, information and disinformation. Propaganda is the order of the day. I wouldn't want to conjecture what has been happening and who is right, who is not right. That's not what I would do. What I would say is that the office of the Inspector General of Police is very high office. He sits on the National Security Council. He should be dealing with, or rather he is tasked with ensuring that the lives, the livelihoods, the property of Kenyans are protected. And it is heavy work. If I was the IG, I would not be coming up and speaking. Because he can be taken out of context. He may not have the full information sometimes, as is sometimes the case. That should be the work of a police spokesperson, to be speaking what they're supposed, what needs to be communicated to the public. And IG is not trained, as we can say, is not trained on public speaking, and it causes, just the speaking itself, even when he's saying the right things, causes more problems than he actually anticipates. And I think that is where I would put a lot of emphasis in terms of who speaks for the police. For the politics of this whole thing, I think Hashi is the best person to answer.
The police were shooting Luos in Luo Nyanza, some of them in the back with 8 or 9 bullets. There's not only documentary evidence. The last 2 weeks there have been burials across Kenya, which was attended by leading members of this country. The voodoo judiciary and its left wing, the IPOA, at least should try to do its job and investigate, so that it can give Kenyans a sense of what is happening. They took the Shakahola thing is now under the rugs. You remember Shakahola? Where we lost hundreds of lives? It's not around anymore now, So this fellow here, who is the police commissioner, in my view, is a tactical trial balloon. Whenever I see the government saying things like this, there's something much more wicked going on in the dark, so that everybody pays attention to the police commissioner while something else is going on. Remember the courier, when you were speaking out, the oil business, the vegetable business, the vegetable oil business. 1 year after the election of our president, and he is our president, can only be thrown out by an election in this country. I predicted 24 hours after the inauguration that he was not going to bring people together, that he was going to ruin the economy. And looks like all those things, are right here on our leading newspapers on how the government 1 year later has failed to deliver on its promises, has failed to bring Kenyans together, has failed to bring up the economy. 80% of the people of Kenya oppose this government today. And that's not me, that's a poll, scientific poll. The president is not leading from the front. The president is leading all by himself. One thing about the president is that he works very hard. But his structure of the cabinet and his structure of the government is failing him, even if his intentions are in the right place. We have to give credit to the president sometimes. I'm a complete critic. I'm a very strong critic. But I also try to balance the interests of our republic with the interests of the politics of this country. The president is wallowing on the shallow end of the pool. And I don't know what the people of this country are going to do, because he has stuck to his economic policy while its economic policy is not working. His police commissioner, you can see, is the most unsuitable police commissioner I have seen since independence. The most unsuitable one. And this is not the first time he has spoken like this. He doesn't build confidence in the police. I am shocked, when they're selecting the police commissioner. I know why they select this type of police commissioner, because when you pick up the phone call and tell him something, he's probably going to do it. Maybe someone picked up a call and told him to go and say those things. It smacks into the memory of those who have died in demonstrating for the right to have some food on the table. It insults the memory of those who believe that they have a right as Kenyans to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It makes a mockery, if that's an understatement. But the families who are alive to see this man say these things, apart from our political divisions, there is something as such a thing as decency and in the English language and protocol. And I think that the president should censure this man, or he believes what he's saying is true.
All right, on that particular note, before we continue with the discussion, we want to take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at these statements as well, and looking at those pronouncements made by the IG. Were they indecorous according to your own assessments? Were they insensitive? And this is what also the human rights are taking special umbrage with as far as that office is concerned. Should there be a very good strategic communication coming from the police department, or there's a communication crisis? We'll take a short break. Don't go away. You're watching Global Today.